So when you saw it on the ballot, it looked like a pretty simple tweak to government, right? A little bit of housekeeping. But, as is so often the case with these constitutional amendments, the real story of Texas's Proposition 12 wasn't in the headline. It was buried deep in the fine print. And what it did? Well, it fundamentally rewired the entire balance of power in the state's judiciary.
And this one sentence from the source analysis, man, it just absolutely nails the heart of the issue. You see, there was this massive disconnect between what voters were told they were doing and what was actually happening to the structure of their government. Accountability? Hey, that sounds great. But centralization? Whoa, that's a completely different animal with very, very different consequences. And that right there is the big question for this entire explainer. So together, we're going to peel back all those layers of legal language and political strategy to see exactly what changed, who wanted it to change, and what it all means for one of the most basic principles of American governance, an independent judiciary.
To really get the hidden part, we first have to look at what was public. The story that was sold to voters was super straightforward, it was reassuring, and let's be honest, it was a little boring, which a lot of the time is exactly the point.
You see, the language they used to describe the amendment, it was all intentionally positive, but also pretty vague. You use words like enhance and transparency, and you frame it as just a simple good governance reform. I mean, who could possibly argue with making things better and more transparent? But as we're about to see, the real change wasn't about transparency at all. It was about control.
All right, now it's time to pop the hood and take a look at the engine. Because to see the real impact of Prop 12, you have to understand the mechanics of this commission it restructured. This, right here, is where the power shift actually happens.
Okay, let's really dive into this, because this slide shows the absolute heart of the change. Before Prop 12, over on the left, you had this 13-member commission. It was made up of 6 judges, 2 attorneys, and 5 regular citizens. Now notice the balance. No single branch of government had control over the group that polices judges. Now, look at the right. Those 2 attorneys appointed by the state bar, poof, they're gone. And the governor's citizen appointments, they jump from 5 all the way up to 7. The 6 judges appointed by the Supreme Court, they stay the same. The math is simple, but the result is profound. And this chart, it just visualizes the new reality perfectly. It's not a balanced body anymore, not even close. It's a 13-member commission where the governor's office now appoints a controlling 7-6 majority. So for the very first time, the executive branch has direct control over the body that can investigate, punish, and discipline the judicial branch.
Now, a change this big, this significant, it doesn't just happen by accident. Nope. It was the result of a very deliberate, long-term strategy by one of the most powerful interest groups in the entire state. So, who were the architects behind this power shift, and what was their ultimate goal?
The source material is really clear on this one. It identifies the primary driver as Texans for Lawsuit Reform, or TLR. For decades, this group has been working to reshape the state's courts, pushing for what they describe as a more predictable, business-friendly legal environment. And Prop 12? Well, it became a key tool in that ongoing project.
According to the analysis, the motivation here was crystal clear: to create a mechanism to discipline what TLR and the governor call activist judges. And these are typically democratically elected judges in large urban counties. Their rulings on really hot-button issues like bail reform or the enforcement of state abortion bans were seen as, obstacles to the state's conservative political agenda. This amendment gives the governor a direct lever to pressure those specific judges.
And this isn't just some abstract shuffling of a government org chart. Oh no. This structural change has tangible, real-world consequences for how judges do their jobs, and, at the end of the day, for the rights of everyday citizens who appear in their courtrooms.
You see, Prop 12 didn't just change who sits on the commission, it also gave the commission much sharper teeth. It can now more easily launch these aggressive investigations. It has the expanded power to suspend a judge without pay, and it can issue public reprimands for these really vague offenses like persistent conduct that is inconsistent with their duties. These new tools just significantly lower the barrier for silencing a judge whose rulings are politically inconvenient.
So here's the crucial point. It creates what legal experts call a chilling effect. So put yourself in a judge's shoes for a second. Let's say you're in Harris County, and you're considering a ruling on civil rights or environmental enforcement that challenges a new state law. Now you have to stop and think, could this trigger an investigation from a commission that's controlled by the governor? Could I be suspended without pay? And that hesitation, that fear of reprisal, that can be enough to stop a judge from making a truly independent ruling.
Okay, now let's zoom out.
because the source material makes it really clear that Proposition 12 was not some isolated event. It was one brick in the wall of a much larger fortress being built around a specific political ideology in Texas, using the state constitution itself as the cement.
The analysis actually gives this strategy a name: constitutional ossification. Now, it sounds kind of complicated, but the concept is fascinating. It basically means you're not just trying to win an election or pass a law anymore. You are literally locking your policy preferences into the state's foundational document, making them incredibly difficult for any future generation of voters or lawmakers to ever change. It's like trying to freeze a particular political moment in time by embedding it in the state's DNA.
And this table right here, it illustrates brilliantly how Prop 12 is just one piece of that much bigger puzzle. The same political coalition that pushed for Prop 12 to centralize executive power, well, they also pushed for amendments to lock in fiscal policy, like banning a capital gains tax, and to enshrine cultural goals, like parental rights. You see how each piece reinforces the others, creating this really rigid constitutional structure.
And this is why weakening the judiciary is so absolutely critical to this larger strategy. In a political environment where the state is constantly working to strip power from locally elected city councils, county governments, and school boards, well, the courts are often the last place citizens can go to protect their rights and challenge unconstitutional state overreach.
And that brings us to the final, critical question. Proposition 12 was designed to weaken that last line of defense. It creates a system where one party can govern with fewer checks and less fear of legal review. So what happens to the rights of the people when their final shield is controlled by the very powers it's supposed to hold in check?